She wasn't supposed to carry a weapon. Hell, she wasn't even supposed to step beyond the perimeter wire. Captain Raina Cortez, Navy Intelligence, was there as an observer, take notes, file reports, send assessments back to headquarters. She was never meant to be the one under fire. But at dawn, on the ridges above Shadow Pass, Kandahar, when America's deadliest snipers began missing shot after shot, and when an entire SEAL element found themselves pinned by ghosts in the rocks, Cortez would do something no classified report ever admitted. Sound off. Soldiers, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments like a unit reporting in. And if this mission already has you locked in, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next operation. The convoy's diesel engines coughed before falling silent, the sound vanishing into the desert stillness. At 05:30 hours, the first rays of sun burned across the ridgeline, turning steel and stone into heat sinks. The air shimmered like fractured glass, bending distance into illusions. Below stretched a valley carved by centuries of flood and wind, opening like a wound, fractured granite, shadowed caves, old riverbeds cut deep into the earth. The wind came sharp, unpredictable, gusts knifing sideways with a metallic taste, carrying grains of sand that stung the teeth. One moment it howled north to south, the next it reversed, as if the battlefield itself were alive. The kind of wind that made veteran snipers curse under their breath and recheck data cards until their knuckles went white. Captain Cortez stepped down from the lead truck, boots finding purchase on loose shale that wanted to betray her. Early 30s, unremarkable in the way career military learned to be. Her black hair was tied tight under her helmet, no insignia flashy enough to draw notice. She carried a standard plate carrier, compact binoculars slung against her chest, no long rifle, no thermal scope, nothing that screamed operator. What was unusual wasn't what she carried, but how she stood. While others shifted uneasily against the gusts, she became still, head tilted slightly, like someone listening to a frequency nobody else could hear. Major Ethan Ward. Delta Force, hit the ground running? At 38, he moved with the controlled aggression of a man who'd earned every scar. His team fanned out with quiet efficiency, no shouted orders, no wasted motion. The SEAL sniper element peeled off toward a jagged outcrop, eager to establish firing lanes. Ward glanced at their uninvited guest, his expression professional. But his eyes betrayed his skepticism. He'd done this job long before headquarters started sending observers. You got what you need. Captain, I do, Cortez answered evenly, without flinching. Sergeant Blake Monroe, lugging a laser rangefinder, pushed past with a smirk. Perfect. Brass sent us a desk jockey to watch us bleed. He didn't bother to lower his voice. Cortez ignored him. She slipped behind fractured rock, raised her binoculars, and began scanning the pass with surgical precision. Through her glass, the terrain revealed itself in layers pale talus spilling like sand, darker limestone scarred with caves, and stubborn tamarisk stitched through dried riverbeds. Her lips moved silently, counting the rhythm of dust trails spiraling then collapsing. To anyone else, it looked like meaningless heat haze. To her, it looked like something else entirely. And then movement, not where the SEAL snipers aimed, but where the wind itself bent unnaturally, as if masking figures already in place. Cortez lowered her glass. They're already here, she murmured. The SEAL snipers chambered rounds, oblivious. Ward turned toward her with a frown, not yet realizing that the trap was already snapping shut. And that was when the first shot missed. The air itself betrayed them. Heat clawed up from sun-baked stone, bending light until the far slope seemed to sway. Every 30 seconds the wind snapped one way, paused, then returned with an opposite edge. Through her binoculars, Captain Raina Cortez tracked the rhythm, counting under her breath as dust swirled and collapsed. To her, the valley was alive, breathing sideways. To the SEAL snipers, it was just another range. "Miss," Ramirez muttered as his second shot sparked off limestone. Holt cursed, working his bolt. Wind call was solid. Dope was perfect. That guy was standing still. He fired again. The round smashed stone 2 feet wide, spraying shards across the slope. The fighters below scattered, fluid as water, disciplined, trained. "That's 9. Major Ward growled, jaw tight. He'd led men through Fallujah and Mosul, but this felt different. Wrong, from another hide. Jensen worked his rifle in rhythm, high, low, high brass clattering, echoes ringing. Nothing fell. Sergeant Monroe wiped sweat grooves through dust on his face. "Thermals are spiking. You're in a thermal funnel draft, splitting up and down." That's when Cortez finally spoke. Calm as a range coach. Exactly. One draft climbs. One falls. Every round's walking in 2 directions. Another shot cracked and drifted high. A staccato burst of AK fire answered the miss. Figures flowed out of caves and cuts with cold precision, each sliding into pre-built lanes. Ward felt the situation slipping like water through clenched fists. This wasn't urban brawling. This was precision, and his precision shooters were failing. Automatic bursts chewed stone, chips sprayed across the ridge, dust fogging positions. Monroe's head snapped up. Mortar tubes listen. The distinct thunk-thunk rolled through the pass. Incoming Ward roared. The first round hit wide, a geyser of dirt. The second landed short. The third arced perfectly and detonated on target. The blast hurled Holt backward, blood lathering his sleeve. Ramirez clutched his shoulder, crimson blooming through his vest. Another impact tore slabs from the ledge and showered them in debris. Below, the enemy machine ran clean suppress. Reposition. Suppress each beat rehearsed into muscle memory. "We move now," Monroe started, then stopped. The wounded wouldn't make the slope. Any retreat meant exposure to every barrel. They were going nowhere. Pinned, bleeding, outplayed. Through it all. Cortez stayed low behind rock, binoculars steady. "They're not scattered," she said quietly. "They're layered." Ward turned, dust carving hard lines in his face. "What did you say, interlocking fields of fire?" she replied, eyes meeting his. "Whoever planned this knew exactly where you'd set up." They drilled this scenario. Another mortar landed close, the shockwave knocking gear from ledges. Holt, half conscious, shoved his M110 across the rock, blood slicking the stock. "Use it," he rasped. Cortez locked the bolt, dialed dope, and turned the wind's violence into math. She spun the suppressor on, shouldered the rifle, and the first hushed report slipped through the chaos. Down in the valley. An RPG man folded before the rocket left its tube. Monroe blinked. What the hell Cortez didn't answer. She was already pivoting, scope sliding to the next distortion. Heat shimmer bent outlines into ghosts, but she read them clean. A fighter who thought himself invisible toppled backward, chest torn by a bullet no one else could track. She never lifted her cheek from the stock. Her tone stayed even, almost clinical, the one keeping you alive, another crack, another figure down. Momentum flipped not through numbers or heavier guns, but through precision. The analyst they'd written off was dismantling a kill box with surgical rhythm. Inhale, exhale, squeeze, each shot deliberate. Final. Where Holt and Jensen had fought dirty thermals. Cortez read the valley like sheet music. A machine gun hammering their flank went mute mid-burst. An RPG loader bent for another rocket, and dropped before his fingers found the crate. The seals, rattled seconds ago, began moving as one again, unconsciously syncing to her cadence. Ward called bearings like a conductor laying cues. Cave mouth. 4 o'clock. I see him. She held steady until a shoulder edged into view. Crack. The rifle clattered from dead hands. Smoke grenades burst. White phosphorus hissed into thick clouds that devoured half the valley. They're trying to vanish, Monroe said. Optics full of fog. Cortez stayed calm, even when the smoke turned sightlines into lies. She tracked how wind pulled and where brief seams opened. A muzzle flickered for less than a heartbeat, she pressed. And the haze exhaled a body. Ward's pulse hammered. This wasn't luck. It was geometry solved faster than the valley could change the problem. Her scope climbed higher, not on movers, but on the jagged wall above. Through smoke and distortion. A hard glint blinked glass, catching light. A commander, too confident with his radio, had betrayed himself. Commander. She murmured. If she was right, the fight could collapse in seconds. She let the world slow air. Smoke, heartbeat falling into the crosshairs. Exhale, settle, press. And the valley began to unravel. Smoke didn't just hide, it revealed, where others cursed. Cortez studied. The wind tugged the phosphorus haze into ragged banners, then sucked them thin, then let them pool again, in those seams. Truth appeared. There. She breathed, as a muzzle winked through the veil. Her shot came and the man fell backward like a puppet with strings cut. Holt stared. Awe edging out pain. She's killing ghosts. Cortez cycled, found another seam, fired again. Somewhere in the haze, a spotter collapsed across his scope. The mortars went silent. Not because they were empty, but because the forward observers who corrected fire were gone. Blind thunder was useless. Major Ward felt it, the fight tilting. The ambush lost its rhythm. Fire came late, then wrong, then fractured. Discipline dissolved into fear, and fear made men predictable. But Cortez wasn't finished. Her scope slid higher to the jagged spine overlooking the exfil route, through distortion. A glint flashed too precise for stone. Optic, heavy, she said. Ward followed and his stomach turned. An anti-materiel rifle, steady on the shelf, sighted exactly where their Blackhawk would drop. One trigger pull and extraction would become a funeral. How long, he asked. Long enough to kill our ride? She reset her dope, adjusted for dirty thermals, and knew the math was bad. 810 meters, half a target, shifting air, a coin toss with lives stacked on it. The safe move was to call the bird wide. The right move was uglier. Cortez flicked her rifle to safe, locked her sling, and rose, Raina Ward barked, but she was already sprinting. The ridge answered with a storm of fire. Shale spat at her boots. Bullets cracked past her hip. Stone sparked. She moved like muscle memory was guiding her, body recalling drills she was never supposed to know low. Fast. Fluid. Crossing gaps only in the breaths between bursts. Cover her. Ward roared. Monroe. Light that shelf, Jensen. Suppress the spur. The ridge came alive with disciplined fury. Delta and SEAL blurred into one machine, pouring suppressive fire that pinned anything dumb enough to lift its head. Cortez slid into a shallow notch, breathing steady, listening to wind, to smoke, to the growing thrum of rotors. A fighter lunged from a cleft. The pistol was in her hands instantly. 2 controlled pairs, a third for certainty, and he collapsed before he understood what had happened. She rebuilt the rifle in motion, hands moving without hesitation, then climbed again. The heavy glass above searched, trying to settle on the valley floor. She cut distance, stole angles because heavy guns lived on distance, and she was suffocating theirs. Two-man team on the Eyrie. Monroe called, "Shooter and spotter." "I see them." Cortez sank behind a horseshoe of stone, the world narrowing to reticle and breath. The spotter leaned in. The shooter settled, cheek welded to the stock. Both were seconds from ending her team. Cortez waited. The gust broke. The smoke sighed. Heat shimmer blinked like a bad light. Somewhere behind her, rotor wash began to thrum against the sky. If she missed, steel and flesh would fall together. She pressed the trigger, and the world went white in the storm of rotor wash. The long gunner's chest jerked once and stilled. His spotter flinched, reaching for the heavy rifle, and caught Cortez's second round instead. He toppled, headset cord snapping taut before he spilled into empty air. "Eyrie neutralized," Cortez said into comms, voice calm as if she were reading inventory. A faint exhale followed, shoulders easing for the first time. "Bird is clear," the Black Hawk dropped in low, skids yawing as the pilot bullied the valley into submission. Dust lifted in sheets, whipped into halos by the rotors. The crew chief hung out the door, hand-cutting quick signals, improvising a landing zone from chaos. Ward's element surged a braid of delta and seal, locking a perimeter with practiced fury. Smoke still walked the low ground, but discipline was gone. With their commander dead and the long gun silenced, the enemy's cohesion broke into fear. Fear wrote bad tactics. Bad tactics died fast. Cortez ran the last descent like gravity had tilted in her favor. A straggler lunged to intercept. She let him choose speed over cover, then ended the mistake with a single shot. Monroe's 3-round burst pinned another against a boulder. The crew chief slapped the hull time to lift, and the bird clawed for sky. Rotor wash pulling grit into their teeth. Inside the cabin, space shrank to webbing, knees and breaths no one trusted yet. Silence hung, heavy and intimate. Ward finally broke it. "How did you do what my best shooters couldn't?" Cortez rested the rifle across her thighs like it was asleep. Her dark eyes met his without hesitation. "I wasn't always an analyst." Monroe's voice had lost its edge. "What were you?" She paused. "Long enough for the crew chief to check straps and for the bird to slip another 100 feet toward safety. The person they send when logistics isn't enough." She said, "Classified." Monroe leaned closer despite his harness. What unit, what command a shadow of a smile? Not warmth, not arrogance, just recognition. The kind that doesn't live on organizational charts. Ward studied her in silence. He glanced at Holt's bandaged arm. Ramirez blinking against dried blood. Jensen staring out the door at the shrinking valley. His men were alive because of her. Some debts could be paid. Some could only be carried. "You saw the trap before we even felt it," Ward said quietly. "You saved my people." Cortez shook her head. "They saved themselves. They adapted. They fought through it. I just tilted the balance." Monroe pulled a spent brass casing from his pocket, one of hers. Scuffed and hot in memory. He turned it between his fingers. Face caught between shame and awe. "Keep it," Cortez said, not reaching. "Engrave it." With what her eyes didn't waver. "Shadow." The word settled into the rotor thrum, meaning something different to each man-shadow unit. Black Ops. The quiet professional who doesn't belong on a roster but saves the roster anyway. Kandahar's ridges fell away into plain. The valley shrank to a scar only they would remember. Down there. Wind already went to work scattering brass, drying blood, turning catastrophe into rumor. Up here, The helicopter's heartbeat said only, "Not today." Ward tried one more time. "Are we ever going to see you again?" Cortez looked past him to the open door, where dawn had burned off into daylight. "You don't usually see the quiet professionals twice," she said. "You just notice the space they leave behind." The bird banked, skids kissing dust, base loomed tents, antennas, hangars scarred with older stories. The crew chief called something practical. Ward answered the same. Cortez stood. Ward opened his mouth, but she stopped him with a look not cold. "Simply finished?" "Sometimes the best way to win," she said, "is to have someone the enemy never saw coming." She hopped down, rotor wash making a halo of grit around her, turning her into a mirage with edges. Then it blew away, and she was only another figure walking into a base coming awake, behind her. The team sat a heartbeat too long, held by something rarer than relief, heavier than survival. Monroe closed his fist around the brass. Later. Off post. Steady hands would cut shadow into it. He'd carry it on long nights. Thumb the letters when wind got strange and the math went cruel. Ward watched Cortez disappear into the traffic of the living mechanics. Medics, voices laughing at bad jokes. She didn't look back. He didn't expect her to overshadow pass. The valley kept its secrets. But one lesson would not fade. Never mistake quiet for harmless. Sometimes quiet is just patience with teeth, waiting for the moment the stakes turn real, and reminding the world what professionals look like.